I'm going to start covering the fuselage. I've got it all sanded, all the edges nice and rounded, and I've already tack ragged it with a tack rag to get rid of all the sanding dust. And so all the parts that are, well, like the fuselage and the wing, for example, you want to cover the bottom of the fuselage and the bottom of the wing first. And that's so that when the edges wrap, and then you cover the sides next, and so the seam is overlapping down so that you don't notice it very much. And then the last thing you cover is the top of the fuselage, so its seams wrap and cover the top seams. You won't even really notice the seams once it's ironed down, and if you do the bottom first, because the overlapping, as you look down, you don't see the seam. So let's start on the bottom of the fuselage here, and we'll just lay this piece on the fuselage. And I have a kind of a lower setting on the iron so it doesn't make it wrinkly to start with. You want to tack it to the front. I'm going to turn it up just a little more because it's not even tacking very well. You don't want to get it too hot, but you need it hot enough to get the adhesive to stick. I'm starting by just tacking it down that front area. And so now what I want to do is tack the back. Make sure you can see. I'm stretching it a little bit, and that kind of helps the edges wrap. Okay, so now I want to tack around the corner a little bit, but you don't want to go too far down because we want to cut most of this off, because you only want it to go just a little bit up the side, not this far. So I've got plenty of covering material. So you don't want to pull this too hard because then it'll offset the covering. So you just want to kind of hold it in place and just go along and just tack that edge down to that radius corner. I don't want to go too far with it because we want to be able to cut it off, cut the excess off. Now we can pull because we have one side tacked down, so we can pull this side and tack that radius. We're just trying to tack this radius down. If you heat the whole area with an iron, you'll start to see the grain of the wood. So to get a nice smooth finish, you just tack the radius part. sliding the iron sideways as I'm tacking on the radius. That helps pull the covering tight. I don't want to tack it to the side of the fuselage yet, just working on this radius. Okay, now that we have the radius tacked down, tack a little more right here. Okay, I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit hotter. I'll wait for that to get start heating up, and while I'm waiting for it to get warm, I'm going to trim this edge closer. So first I want to cut from the very back. I want to cut a slot right there. You can take this corner right off. Just cut a little square out. And I'll do the same on the, is this in the shot? Probably not. Let me move up here so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm putting the scissors right at the end of the fuselage. Just make a cut right to the corner of the wood. And you just take that corner and just cut that corner out. Okay, so I'm going to tack this end piece down, and what I'm going to do is I've got the iron hotter now, it's heated up now, and I'm going to pull and stretch this. I'm going to heat it and stretch it first before I seal it down. And that way the heat allows the covering to stretch out over that radius and stretch. And we're not going to close the whole back in because that's the only place for air to get out of the fuselage. So just going to cut it off so there's a little, I mean, it's not going to be much air, but this is a small motor, and it's not going to be drawing heavy amounts of current, so our heat isn't going to be very high. But on some models you need a large area of place for it to vent out the heat out of the fuselage somewhere. Okay, so now what I want to do is trim the covering. So I'm grabbing a hold of a place on the corner. Can you see that? Yeah, okay. Holding the corner, and then make a small cut, and then, okay, I'm just sliding the scissors and making this cut, but it's starting to not go straight, so I'm going to have to get a hold of it again and see if I can demonstrate this. It's tougher on camera. Okay, so there I'm keeping it closer to the fuselage. You have to be careful not to scratch the wood with the scissors. We're going close to the fuselage and trimming. I'm still holding on to this corner so that it has something to pull against as it's cutting, because I'm not actuating the scissors, it's just sliding and cutting with the sharp edge of the scissors. So that's pretty good. There's one, that's pretty good, that'll work. So now I can make a cut in the front. I'll cut this, let's see, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to have to take the motor off to finish that firewall, but I'm just going to leave it for now and just make these cuts. Okay, so now I'm going to iron this down all the way around, all the way onto the side. So we're just, after we've cut it, we're just sticking it down, making sure it's really stuck. And this hotter temperature will help to get it stuck down better too. So the reason we do this in 4 pieces is because we have all these compound curves, and if we tried to do it just with one piece and iron it down, we'd end up with wrinkles, and there'd be places we couldn't stretch it enough to keep the wrinkles out with the compound curves. Now we will be doing compound curves on wingtips and things like that, where there's a trick we can use to try and stretch it around the compound curves. So I'll show you that when we get to the wing. So again, I'm holding the end of the material and just sliding the scissors along, making the cut along the side of the fuselage. And I'll iron this side down also, this edge down. So we're continuing it on around the radius. Keep pulling the material to the side as we're ironing it down. Getting poked by those push rods. Here I'm not really putting any pressure on, I'm just trying to heat this area where there's a slight bulge. So we'll take the rest of that out with the heat gun after we get more work done on the fuselage. Okay, so I'm going to take these screws out so I can get part of this firewall covered. One on the floor. I don't know where it went. Here it is. Okay. So I'm going to make a slit where this hole is. The hole is where it goes around the wires. Pull a little bit as I'm heating, trying to stretch that out before it gets actually stuck down. wires to contend with here. Wires, motor wires. So we have electric motors, so we don't have to worry about fuel proofing like we have to with a nitro powered model. So that covers the bottom part of the firewall. Okay, so now we do one of the sides. Okay, I gotta turn this down again and I gotta wait for it to cool down. If it's too hot, it'll wrinkle the covering because it'll shrink so much from the heat. Once you get it bonded on to the balsa, then you can turn the heat up higher to stick it down better. But to start out, you want to start with a cooler setting. Okay. So we're doing the side now, so I'm sticking the covering material near the front on the side of the fuselage. So you can see if you pull on this end a little bit, you can see it start to try and shape and curve to the edges. So, oops, do it like this. Okay, so I just want to stick it down, but don't pull too much on one side until you get this side tacked down. Then you, on the other side, you can, once this is tacked, you can pull on the other side. I'm just doing the radius part. checking to make sure that was tacked. So now I'm going to make my cut. I got too much overlap, so I'm going to make another cut that's closer. Getting away from the edge now. Try and make the cut, the space consistent. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we can iron this down. Turn my heat up a little more. So I'm just trying to get that radius, that seam tacked down on the radius. And later we can take the heat gun and tighten up the covering in the middle. So just making that seam, sealing up that seam. You can use some pressure on the actual seam and it'll almost disappear, especially with this higher heat. Okay, now we're going to stretch, tighten that covering up, and then tack it down to this radius again, opposite radius, the top radius of the fuselage. Okay, this area is the cockpit or the hatch, so you just pull down and just tack it to that sharp edge of where the hatch comes to, and I'll show you how we finish it off later. After we get this all tacked. So now we're at the wing saddle. So we have another sharp edge here. Just pull and tack to that sharp edge. So we can make a cut, since this is a curved saddle. Cut right here, and cut all the way down to where this this off. I'm going to go all the way to the end of the wing saddle and make a cut right at the end of the wing saddle, right there. Okay. Now I can iron this direction on the wing saddle. So we're going right around that 90-degree edge. I need a cut right here, right here. So this can continue wrapping around. You could just cut it off, but it's pretty short, so we can just keep wrapping it around here. Okay, so now continue pulling this tight and working on this radius. Okay, so now let's make a cut here. So I gotta get that, there we go. Okay, now okay, so now there is a slot back here for the horizontal stabilizer. You just kind of feel it with your finger. And so I want to make sure that that's bonded on all the edges, because we're going to have to cut that slot open, and I don't want it. I want it to be bonded so that it doesn't come loose. And so the slot starts about here. And come back just a little bit from the start. You don't want to be right at the start. Probably do it better from the other side where I can still see it. We can't do it once we cover this side, but right now I can just cut through the middle of the slot like that. And on the edge, just make some little slits so the covering will go right around the edge of the slot. I think what we'll do is we'll get the trim iron that can fit into the slot and iron those edges down. We'll do that later. Okay, I need to work on this area where the hatch goes. So it has to follow a curve here. There's a curve here also. And this part is flat. Make sure it's ironed down to the, this is a 90 degree area here. So this slot, we have to go fit right into that slot. Probably should be using my trim iron for this also. It's easier with a smaller iron. I don't know if you can see that, but there's also an edge that comes up from there. So once you get that edge down, then you can heat it and attach it to this edge, the edge that's sticking up. And then lastly, you can do this top edge. Make sure I don't seal any wires in there. I'm going to probably trim that with my trim iron. Okay. Now we have these corners that have to do. You heat and stretch. Pull down on it as you're heating. Get it to go right around that curve. And this is hidden under the canopy once you get the curve stuck down. Okay, now we have this radius to do. It'd be easier if I took the battery out, but oh well. So you probably want to see how that looks with the canopy on. So let me grab that. Fits into a tab in the front, and then the magnet holds it down. So this will shrink up with the heat gun, but oh, I still have the firewall to do too. But anyway, that's how it looks. Okay, so let's do a snip right here and there. That should be fine. So I don't know, I think this video is getting pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and just do the other side without running the video camera, and it's the same, and then I'll come back and show you what we do. Well, actually I could run the heat gun quick and show you how it looks once all the bagginess is out of it. You want to look at the reflection from the light and then just tighten up areas that need to be tightened. If you get it too close and too hot, then it'll melt the hole, but I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but let me get closer to the camera. So anyway, I've got one more side to do, and then the top, and then the fuselage will be done.